He started staring at 4 in the afternoon. He did not stop until 2 in the morning. By then, the father understood that the dog had known for 10 hours what nobody in the house had thought to look for. David Osei had a 5-year-old golden retriever named Quincy, who had been, across all 5 of those years, the most reliably cheerful animal David had ever shared space with. Quincy did not brood. He did not fixate. He did not enter rooms with a purpose and then stand there with that purpose locked in the specific hell-breath stillness that David was now watching from the hallway. Quincy was staring at David's son, Eli. Eli was 5 months old. He was in his bouncer in the living room, half asleep, the way infants are at 4 p.m. on a January afternoon. Not quite there, not quite gone. Quincy was on the rug 3 feet away, with his head low and his eyes up, and every part of his body oriented toward the baby's face. He had been like that for 40 minutes when David first noticed. He had been like that for 90 minutes when David spoke to him for the first time. He had been like that for 3 hours when David's wife, Adez, came home from work and said, standing in the doorway, "What's wrong with Quincy?" David said, "I don't know. He's been like this since 4. Adez watched for a minute. She was a data analyst. She didn't believe in intuition. She believed in patterns. She said, "He hasn't blinked." David looked. She was right. Quincy was not blinking at normal frequency. He was in the specific held focus of an animal that has assigned something the category of, "This is the only thing that matters right now." Eli seemed fine. He was eating. He was cycling through his usual patterns. He had no fever. He was not crying in any way that carried a different register than his normal sounds. There was nothing by any measure either of them could apply that looked like a problem. Quincy had not moved in 4 hours. David brought him his food bowl. Quincy did not look away from Eli. David put the bowl down in front of him. Quincy stepped over it and repositioned closer to the bouncer. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Adez said, "Should we call the vet?" She did not mean this seriously. She meant it the way you say a thing when you need to say something, and the options are limited. David didn't call the vet. He called his sister, who had 3 kids and 2 dogs, and a practical turn of mind. She said, "Some dogs do this with babies when they're anxious. It's separation anxiety. He's probably picking up on your stress. The baby's fine. Just ignore him." So David ignored him. At 11 p.m., Eli went to bed. Quincy followed. He lay on the floor beside the crib. His eyes, when David checked from the doorway, were open. At 2:11 a.m., David heard him. Not a bark. Quincy had not barked once in the entire 10 hours. A sound like the one a dog makes when it has been waiting a very long time and has decided that waiting is over. A single, low, deliberate vocalization that had nothing ambient or unconscious about it. David was in the nursery in under a minute. Eli was in the crib, awake, making a small sound that David could not immediately categorize. Quincy was standing with his front paws on the crib rail, nose pressed to the mattress beside Eli's head, and when David turned on the light, he saw that Eli's chest was moving in a way that did not look right. Too fast. Too shallow. He picked Eli up and felt the heat immediately, a fever that had come from nowhere and arrived all at once. 104.1 on the forehead thermometer, 104.6 under the arm. He was on the phone with the pediatric emergency line before Adez woke up. Has your dog ever done something you couldn't explain until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. Eli had RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, common and usually manageable, but in a 5-month-old with developing respiratory systems, capable of becoming dangerous quickly. His fever had spiked. His breathing rate was elevated. The attending physician, Dr. Christine Park, monitored him through the night and told David and Adez that the fever trajectory they had interrupted was a concerning one. Dogs can detect fever in the earliest stages, she said, before it becomes measurable on a standard thermometer. The compounds produced by an infection, the metabolic byproducts of an immune response, are present in the breath and on the skin hours before any surface temperature test would catch them. Your dog was responding to a chemical signature that indicated your baby was fighting something. She looked at the chart. She looked at them. He started responding to it at 4 p.m. The fever became clinically measurable at 2 a.m. That's 10 hours of warning. You had 10 hours. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. They went home the following afternoon. Eli was stable. The fever had been brought under control. He was, in the clinical language of the discharge form, responding well to treatment. Quincy was at the door. He pressed his nose to Eli's blanket the moment a daze sat down with him on the floor. He held it there for a long time. Then he pulled back, and his whole body released in one long exhale. The specific exhale of an animal whose extended vigil has finally found its resolution. David sat down next to him on the floor and didn't say anything. He had ignored Quincy for 6 hours. He had let his sister's framework override what he was actually watching. He had had 10 hours of warning, and he had used them to bring Quincy his food bowl and step over the uneaten bowl and walk away. Quincy put his chin on David's knee. He had the capacity to hold a grudge the way water has the capacity to hold its shape in an open palm. None whatsoever. He was just glad the vigil was over. He was just glad the thing he had been trying to say had finally been heard.